It's not really a secret at this point, but people tend to not really like Primaris, both in the canon and in the fandom. I think by now we're all familiar with the reasons the fans tend to not like Primaris as much. Oh, it's a cash grab, it doesn't make sense in the lore, it's heresy, that sort of thing. And I'll be the first to say it, yeah, I agree with a lot of those things. But the reason characters in canon don't like Primaris, aside from the heresy aspect, is in my mind really interesting. Namely, why the Firstborn Marines don't like them that much, or like serving alongside them as much, especially the Firstborn Marine command staff. This comes up really nicely in the book Shroud of Night, which is an Alpha Legion book that I highly recommend. In it, we get a scene where an Imperial Fist captain named Daisorian debates with his tech marine Pavras about why he doesn't like Primaris or trust them, because Pavras is a big supporter and really enthusiastic of them. It goes like this.
The Primaris are sound. More than sound. They carry something of the Primarch within them. Most of our warriors venerate them. They are valuable assets, and they are our battle brothers. But you still don't trust them, do you?
We have fought the long war against chaos without them for 10,000 years,
replied Daisorian, sub-vocalizing as to not be overheard.
New genetics, new weapons, spawned from the work of a tech-magos trying to imitate? No, worse, to improve upon the Emperor's own labors? Battle brothers who do not even serve time in the scout companies or the Devastators before taking their place in the line? I neither trust nor need such warriors amongst my ranks, Pavras. Dorn's Fist, they're not even proven in battle.
Now, for those who don't know, when a Marine sort of passes that early neophyte stage and has, I think, almost all of the organs implanted, he becomes something known as a Scout Marine. They're used as sort of forward look-aheads and wayfinders for the rest of the force, and they don't have power armor. After they've proven themselves as Scout Marines, though, they do get power armor and are assigned to the Devastator squads. What they do is they use the chapter's heavy weapons as fire support at a distance and as target finders for the rest of the chapter. And there's a good reason for this. That being, it lets them have that battlefield experience without putting them directly underfoot as they learn on the front line. It also lets them observe their seniors and gain insight as to what they do, learn by watching. You could sort of think of it almost like an internship of sorts. The Primaris Marines, on the other hand, do not have either of these things. They come out of the gate fully armored and ready for frontline service, which just isn't how things work. And I know people like to rip on the Codex a lot, and yeah, that's fair, but this is one of those instances where the Codex is absolutely right, because that progression system of Scout Marine to Devastator to Line Marine is really effective at giving you something that cannot be given through genetic implantation or even psycho-indoctrination. Battlefield instinct. And that's not just a theoretical, it comes up in canon. The closest equivalent I can think of is back during the Siege of Terra, where, near the end of the Horus Heresy, legions on both sides of the conflict started mass indoctrinating new Marines to sort of fill the gaps and shore up their numbers for the final push. They would basically let in anyone and everyone who could survive the psychoactive treatments and the new organs and all those sort of things without really looking for the best and the brightest. And oftentimes, those new Marines, especially on the traitor side, would be sort of used as chaff. They'd be sent rushing into engagements, oftentimes their first ever time seeing combat, and just being mown down by veterans in order to soften up the defenders and collect valuable battlefield data. But they weren't as particularly valuable because they didn't have the same experience as the veteran units coming in behind them, and that difference matters a lot. Loyalist legions, and in particular the White Scars, would actually counter this by ensconcing those new Marines alongside veterans. For example, Jubal Khan had a new Marine named Changxi shadow him all the way up until he died, even going so far as to quiz the young Marine as one of his last acts to his legion. Without this kind of nurturing and insight, Primaris Marines are left with a lot of potential, but almost no mechanical knowledge or even good sense, to the point where they come across almost like babies. There's an instance that I'm sure you've probably heard of, where a group of Primaris Marines were being escorted to the new chapter they were sent to reinforce, only to find out en route that the chapter had turned renegade. The custodies escorting them immediately said, "Okay, we're going to detain you until we can figure out what's going on here." The Primaris Marines' response was to say, "Hey, this might just be a misunderstanding, let's go figure this out first," instead of jumping to any conclusions. The custodies asked once, asked twice, the Primaris wouldn't relent, and then they were just slaughtered. See, What the Primaris were saying on paper made sense and was reasonable. But realistically, you do not do that! No Marine who has spent even 5 seconds in combat, or any normal amount of training or any time around veterans, would even think to question a Custodes, let alone give them this kind of lip. And it's this lack of sense that sees Primaris die a lot. I did a fair bit of asking around, and everyone I asked seemed to generally be in agreement. Primaris seem to die a lot. Like any book they're in, doesn't matter if they're named or not, don't get attached. They just tend to die pretty easily. And when I say easily, I mean to any competent foe. Yes, they have greater abilities, but when they win, it tends to be because of their bulk, or because of other factors. But on a technical level, they just get killed really easily, be it in Shroud of Night or in the A Dawn of Fire series. To illustrate everything I've said, let me read a passage from the book A Throne of Light from the Dawn of Fire series. The context of this being a Primaris Captain fighting a Dark Apostle Terminator Wordbearer. Arios raised his pistol and fired every bolt it carried directly at his head. The Dark Apostle twisted his hand. The bolts veered aside from him harmlessly, exploding on the walls and ceiling.
Are you the best the Corpse Emperor can do?
The warrior said.
In all the times I have faced you, I have yet to feel anything but contempt for you vaunted new Space Marines.
He swiped at Arios with one of his enormous gauntlets. Clawed fingers screeched through the air. Arios dodged back. He tried to restart his sword. Then again, the disruption field flared back into life.
10,000 years of his so-called wisdom picked over for this?
Said the Dark Apostle.
Warriors that think like machines, spirit replaced by the vanity of technology. Where is the heart and the fury of the legions of old? Where are your souls? And they call you an improvement? You should know who ends you, Primaris. I am Prido Vrakon, bearer of the word. Submit yourself to me, and know the salvation of the Four.
The warrior advanced another step, striking with the butt of his gun, then his right power fist. Arios stood his ground, ducking the swiping gun so it passed a hair's breadth from his face. He only just caught the power fist. Rival disruption fields roared and cracked as his sword slid between Vakron's fingers, threatening to cut into the gauntlet, but the Dark Apostle twisted his wrist ever so slightly, trapping the blade between his fingers. He stared into Arios' eye lenses.
You are a captain, a hero of your dying god. Never have I seen anything less deserving of the rank!
He twisted his wrist further, breaking Arios' weapon. The blade shattered. The power field burst with a dazzling blast of blue light that temporarily blinded Arios, but did not seem to affect Vrakon. Arios shoved back, widening the gap between them. It was a desperate and ill-judged move. As the captain staggered, the Dark Apostle raked down. Fingers wreathed in disruptive power, tore Arios' arm free. The smoking remnants clashing onto the ground. Arios roared in pain.
To think the sons of the Emperor are so weak,
Vrakon said.
I expect a challenge from you every time I face you, and every time I am disappointed.
He swiped again, an ursine blow, breaking open Arios' breastplate. Another blow ripped the pauldron from his ruined arm. Arios fell to his knees, blood pouring from his chest and arm. His shoulder was broken, sharp bone splinters pressed into his lungs, and his breath became a rapid, suffocating hitching. Prido Vrakon stood over him, peering contemptuously over the rim of his armor.
Pathetic,
he said. Then he turned about and left Arios to die. As we can see, Arios got absolutely bodied because he lacked the good combat sense. Instead of moving backward and giving Arios the space he needs to strike, he should have closed the gap and tried to knock him forward, using his bulk and greater weight to throw him off balance at least just a little bit to sort of even the playing field. Something like a body check, a shoulder push, or even a headbutt. Anything to keep the initiative and keep your enemy moving instead of striking. Because the only good reason to have distance is if you have a greater reach, something he just lost. Maybe I am a little hard on the Primaris in general, but it seems like all they bring to the Imperium is fancy new toys, weight of numbers, and, for lack of a better word, dumb muscle. But what do you guys think? Do you think this will be something that is rectified in the future? Do you think Primaris are fine as they are, or do you think they're just not really gonna do as much as the Imperium thinks they'll do? I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.